guess it's my turn. I would like to start out my section by responding to a number of statements that are floating out there that I think we need to bring into perspective. First one is critical functions like equipment maintenance and disaster preparedness were not done, speaking of prior to CAL FIRE. Just a note that we currently employ the only certified heavy equipment mechanic in the unit. I'm not saying that there's another very skilled mechanic in the unit, but he's not certified. Because I understand there's no reason under CAL FIRE to certify him. So we're not talking about capability. We're just saying that the mechanic that we currently have has been here all along. And to say that the equipment maintenance wasn't there prior to him, same person, then and now. Grand jury reports and former chiefs condemned the department. As far as I know, the big one that's out there is one letter. And the interesting thing, and I've said this here before, is before that letter was written, I had talked with the chief. We had spent a long time sitting in his office talking about what had been going on. I wasn't on the board, I was just a citizen. And his response to me was, I can fix this department. It's going to take time. It's going to take a board's commitment to it. I don't have either. The board doesn't want to fix the department, and so I'm going to write them the letter that they want to have, and I'm going to be gone. And sure enough, within a few short months, he was gone. Secondly, the grand jury report at that time was, all the information for it was supplied by the same people that wanted the department gone, according to him. I didn't talk to the board, so I don't know what the board was thinking. All I have is his comments to respond to. Next, CAL FIRE provided upgraded training. Currently, our advanced medical training that occurs with our employees here, which brings everybody up to a higher standard, is by a trainer that has been around with this district for a long time. Very well respected. My son, who's a paramedic, said he's probably the best trainer that he's ever sat under. That trainer is still here and is still doing the job now as before. Cliff rescue training provided by this district, before and now. I'm sure that CAL FIRE has improved on the training for wildland management. I wouldn't expect any more. We're going to go through, there's no documented reasons to change. Obviously, the response to that one is we've already been talking about it now. We'll be talking about it more. We've been talking about it for a long time. One of the comments I'll make there is that one of the reasons people say don't worry about the finances, if the state goes sideways, we'll just change. You can see how much trouble it is right now to just change. The state's functions go to where it becomes more costly. It's not going to be any easier to change then and now. I'm not saying that's a positive reason for change, but at the same time, I'm saying don't use the excuse that if the state goes financially bad, that we're just going to change. We're not just going to change. It's going to be a hard process to change. It's going to be a very difficult process, as you can see as it is right now. We've talked about what that change occurs. How does the ending of the CAL FIRE contract make the Coastside safer? Very simply, it allows a full focus of the staff to be on the mission to protect the Coastside first, and which increases community buy-in. And I'm going to go into a lot of these pieces a little bit more later on. These were just comments that came out of a letter. There's a piece that my personal agenda is going to be fully exposed. Well, people, my personal agenda has a long time been fully exposed. My agenda is nothing else than to supply the best possible service to this community and to my family. There's nothing else behind that. You can have all the imaginations you want. You can dream up all the reasons you want. I'm telling you right now, fact, I'm not doing this for any reason other than what I believe in. And that is my belief that the change brings the best possible service that I can have to my family. Now, I'll tell you, we had stories here from before. I was saved from being very severely burned by an old CAL FIRE captain on a one-engine, or one-man Schedule B, or not Schedule B, but B-type, on a B-type rig. I was in a car, excavating a woman on a rollover. When the firefighters at that time, just learning with their fancy new tools how to open up a car, didn't divert the gasoline that was spilling from the car and ignited that gas. Both the victim and myself were suddenly engulfed in flames. And if it hadn't been for a CAL FIRE captain who had a lot of experience sitting there with a safety line pulled, which blew that fire right out of the engine compartment, I probably wouldn't look the way I do today. Which is pretty bad, I know, but nevertheless. So all I'm trying to say is I have nothing, no negatives there. On the other hand, I've also experienced medical support, unfortunately, way too many times at my home. First for a son who's no longer with us, and then for a grandson who is. I've seen good medical care and I've seen bad medical care. I happen to be a person who spent most of his college and high school years in the emergency rooms and surgeries of hospitals. So I'm not an expert, I'm not a paramedic, but I've ridden the ambulance, I've driven the ambulance before the days when we had the tools we had today, when all we had was our hands and our skill sets. I do recognize some of the differences when I see them and when they're presented. What it says to me is there's good guys and there's bad guys in every organization. But I do see some of the concerns, and medical service is a passion of mine. It also provides probably close to 80% of the calls that we do. We have the, which bothers me very much by what some of the things so far that's been reported. If you want to recall me, and that's your choice, I accept it. I've got a lot of other good things to do. But over 1,000 people elected me to this post. I was the #1 vote getter. So you may not like the fact that I sued the district or was part of that suit. But the voters put me following that in the #1 position. They knocked every existing incumbent that had voted to bring CAL FIRE in out of office. That's how the people felt at that time. The following 2 years later, Mr. Rydell here, probably the most outspoken opponent of CAL FIRE, was also the #1 vote getter. After all the threats we've had over the past year, 2 years, coming up to this last election, I thought for once we were going to get a debate on what we should do with CAL FIRE or not. Nobody even bothered to put their name in. And now you want to run out and run a recall. Excuse me if I'm just a little bit disenchanted with my neighbors. Said what we're going to do, nobody bothered to do it. Now you want to do this? Okay, I accept it. When I hear people coming in, little old ladies, retired men walking into the store and saying, is it really true that we're not going to have any firefighters at all if I don't sign that petition? No, there's lots of ways you're going to have firefighters. But who's out there collecting signatures on that fear factor? Who's out there telling people that if they don't sign this petition, the taxes are going up? Or that there's not going to be any animal rescue, large animal rescue next year if they don't sign the petition. Now, I know that most of you out there who are circulating petitions aren't saying those things. But you need to check on the people that are circulating them and make sure they know what they're talking about. And threatening people to get signatures, well, you make your own decisions. Finally, you talk about, and this particular article talked about, that we're trying to get rid of CAL FIRE and bring back the old. I don't think there's a single member of the board here that wants the old. You want the chance to do something better and something new. So let me go down that list. First of all, under the financial, I was going to ask you one question, Chief, before we got started here. You talked about that if we make a decision to go to CAL FIRE or go away from CAL FIRE, you're going to start transferring people out immediately. Is that, or very soon? You remember saying that?
You know, I remember that we have discussed that it would take us about a year to make sure that every employee is taken care of. I don't think either one of us know exactly what the size of that issue is going to be. It's all going to be dependent on what type of MOU or benefits and salary offer. But once we have the indication, we'll start our process. It doesn't mean that people move away. I think what I did say was as people have left either for promotions, we have not filled in behind them. So right now we have 3 vacancies.
Okay. I just wanted to be sure I knew where we were going on that. Okay, thanks. First of all, on wage and benefits, on a standalone district, wage and benefits packages are negotiated. Here, they're set by the state, along with the accumulation of unfunded liability levels, which are not ours to control at all. Why do we want to hitch our wagon to a star that refuses to look at its own long-term liability numbers? Right now, there's no control over salary or benefits. They've added a 5% step increase just recently. You've heard about tonight the PLP program, which adds a very significant liability of one extra day per month. That's 12 extra days per year that they're off, potentially. You've heard Chief Ferrara talk about the difficulty in just staffing if they were really have to take that day off. And the way around it is to tell them they're going to accumulate it instead, which just kicks the can down the road. You know, I worked out, we talk about the more shifts, the longer work week, etc., that CAL FIRE does. But then I started to go through and look through some of the MOU, and I agree that thing, boy, I don't know how you guys get through it. Because that is one of the most complicated documents I've ever seen as far as the number of weird hours that you accumulate each month for sick leave and for vacation time, and how all of that works back into the to how you are debited it when you take it off. So my hat is off to you. But just from the little bit that I managed to gather, is it turns out that I think you're working somewhere between 116 to 128, depending on which PLP program you're under, shifts per year. A firefighter under a regular system works about 112 shifts per year. And so there really is, it all of a sudden becomes not a big differential because of the number of holidays, for example, that you're credited with and allowed to take as days off, while most departments take holidays as included within the salary, rather than getting caught up in that extra leave day system. By the way, I started worrying when we first came in that you guys were spending so much extra time here that your families were going to really suffer. But I figured out that if you work it right, you actually can do pretty well on that. Complicated. Additionally, we have waiting in the wings the 5% excessive retirement buyout that we're looking at, and all of these, of course, have an 11.5% admin fee sitting on top of it. In a standalone department, the board controls the wages and benefits costs, and that includes the funded and unfunded liabilities. It makes the decisions as to what kind of retirement benefits are paid. It makes the decisions because it holds the purse strings that say this is the amount of money that's available. You know, you can shake your head all day long, but I've sat on negotiating committees.
That's right. They said you're going to have to negotiate. That's when the decisions.
Again and again and again, I've sat on negotiating committees, and the one thing that happens is we sit down and negotiate. How much do you want in salary? How much do you want in benefits? This is the number that you have to decide. Negotiations isn't over, well, I want another $1,000, I want another $10,000, I want another $100,000. The board decides what that number is, and that's what's given.
You negotiate, you don't decide, you agree. Big difference.
You're talking to a man who's done it many times. CAL FIRE has a take it or leave it contract with no alternatives. We heard tonight people say, well, why don't you just negotiate the pieces away? You did Exhibit E, just negotiate the rest of the contract. You've heard Chief Ferrara say, and it's fact, the first piece of that document is a state-imposed contract. We've tried to change it. And I don't fault Chief Ferrara for not trying. We tried to change it, but the fact is, it is what it is. It's a take it or leave it contract. There are certain things, and a big piece of those things that just aren't changeable. That's what Sacramento tells us. We established Exhibit E to get some definition of what the minimum level of service is. It was a long and difficult process. A lot of it was very amicable. Other things just seemed to take forever to get done. For example, response times. I remember the amount of going back and forth, and finally I had to go and pull the NFPA standard and bring it in here in order for us to get to settlement on that. It was a tough, long road, and it was the start of where we wanted to go. Unfortunately, we haven't moved on from where that start was. Shared personnel save us money. Right now, though, the negative has come to, we're in the debt side. We've paid for, I think, about 50 days right now of employment of employees who work for the county. So we've given the county a gift of 50 days worth of work. I would hope that those people can be used to work back the other way. But right now, that's where it's at. It's necessary to have constant vigilance. And this is one of the tough things about sitting here. These are things the board shouldn't have to do. It shouldn't have to sit here and watch and see that costs are not slipped in to Schedule A that should be in Schedule C. It shouldn't have to be worried about what's been expended or not expended. And if somebody is coming and changing things. The next item is control of work rules. Control of how the work rules are that people work under significantly affects the production levels. You look at San Mateo's contract, for example. They work on a 10-hour day. Everybody is expected to be at a specific place at a specific time all day long for 10 hours. And I understand for those that are back there, that are from there, when you finish your day, for most captains, you better still be working on your stuff. If you miss a street, if you didn't get an address, if you didn't know where something was, your captain, in most cases, expects you to be in the map book figuring it out so that next time it doesn't happen again. Now, that's not 100%. They've got captains just like everybody else that really don't care. Which brings me to the issue of captains. Captains are the linchpin of training within the fire service, as far as I can tell. They're the people with the experience that takes the people underneath them, the firefighters, and brings them up to standard. Nobody has a training officers that can be responsible for doing all the training. You depend upon your captains to take that crew and bring it up to standard. Problem comes if your captains aren't from your organization, or they're from out of district and they're over here working overtime. They can't train a crew on things that they don't know. It's that simple. The other thing that's very important that I've been told over my years with being associated with the fire service is that the continuity of your engine crews are essential to good performance. Otherwise, do those three people work together often enough that they know what's going on, what the other person's going to do next? The better they know that, the better it works. When that medic comes off the engine, he knows his firefighter, EMT, is going to be doing a certain set of things in support of him. And he knows where his captain's going to be. It means that his treatment of the patient is he doesn't have to think about, do I need supplies? Do I need this bag? Do I need something else? Because he knows that his crew know him well enough that they're going to make sure those things are right there by his hands. Now, as soon as you have somebody else there, as soon as you have a substitute, it reduces his level of efficiency. Doesn't make him a not as good medic, it just reduces his level of efficiency. Doctor in an operating room that's working with a new nurse is not going to be as efficient in surgery as the one that works with his regular nurse. And that's true in a lot of things. But when it comes very critical is when it gets to things where people's lives are impacted and where they are touched by how well and how efficient the people that are with them work. By the way, I've had more than one person come up and say to me, kick CAL FIRE out before it kills somebody. Now, before anybody goes anyplace else with that, I've spent a good 10 to 15 minutes with that person, talking him down and saying, you're barking up the wrong tree. You're letting your emotions take over for what your logic should tell you. That isn't the issue we're dealing with here. But nevertheless, we have anger on the other side too. And it takes us, hopefully in the middle someplace, to try and work all those things out and bring reality to the scenario. Grant writing. Unfortunately, the young man that's moving away from us is probably our most prolific grant writer. Literally brought hundreds of thousands of dollars into this district by taking the time to write the grants. I know under Exhibit E we're supposed to have grant writing, and I don't recall yet, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't recall any grant coming through to this district off of the work down at Felton. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm just saying I don't recall it.
The vegetation management grants, have we received those here?
Did we get those time? So, thank you. We've talked about already the difference between the head of an organization being an at-will employee versus somebody that we really don't get any choice in. And that doesn't make, it just is what it is. There is a difference between being represented by somebody who's focused and dedicated to what goes on versus somebody that wears multiple hats. I know we talked about, and you've already given the example, that there's a number of chiefs in this district or in this county who wear multiple hats, but every one of them, therefore, has conflict. They have multiple people to represent, and it makes them less effective as far as representing any given entity. And, you know, Chief Farrar is no different in that than they are. But the way that things are split is that one of the things that happens is every one of those chiefs is representing a county district or a county agency, something right local with what he's dealing with. Unfortunately, Chief Farrar is burdened with the fact that he's also got to represent all the state interests. And he's got to represent the union interests. And that is something that's unusual, unlike any of the others. Next things on my list are something that I have worked and thought over a lot. And I'm just going to put it this way and skip most of them because I think we're going where I don't want to go right now. I've spent the last 4 years talking to people all over the state, inside and outside of CAL FIRE. These pieces of information come from people that are within CAL FIRE. It's come from other CAL FIRE districts, etc. Chief officers. Riverside County is a very unique organization within the CAL FIRE organization. They think of themselves as Riverside County. If you look at them and you ask them, who are you? I'm Riverside County Fire. Oh, by the way, I do wear a CAL FIRE patch on my shoulder. But the emphasis is in who they, in their identity to their community. Unfortunately, when we come up here, it seems like our emphasis is on we're CAL FIRE first and Coastside second. And it's just one of the things I sort of watch. It's how you put out logos, how you park vehicles, how you put forth your name. The other sad thing is, never mind. The focus on the service we need is the focus on service, and it's totally another subject. Focus on services needed by the district rather than focuses needed by the state. Promotional standards are those set by common practice rather than sitting down in front of a computer and doing self-rating programs. I was just the other day trying to figure out how to go about scoring on the latest promotional exam that had been developed by the state. And the answer was simple. When you score yourself, don't score yourself against your fellow firefighters. Score yourself as if you were sitting there against a gas station attendant. And then you score how good you are in the various areas of proficiency that this self-rating test was done. That was the captain's exam promotion for this last time round with CAL FIRE. It was best described to me in some ways as somebody, he said, what is the difference between working here now and working here 10 years ago? He said it's the difference between renting your home and owning your home. Interesting comparison. The bind community means that we have a long-term working relationships with our allied agents. And unfortunately, I've had sheriffs, I've had AMR people, I've had other people who work every day that say, why aren't we respected? Why, when we walk in the door, do we feel we're pushed aside? Now, I am very hopeful that we've got maybe one, maybe two captains out there that are doing this. But the fact that people are taking the time to stop me and tell me that is troublesome. But I'm not involved in personnel, so all I can do is react as a board member. We talk about getting up to level on rope rescue and on cliff rescue. Pleased to report that I got that everybody I think has passed their test on basic skills. Unfortunately, less than a year ago, I had one of you, not sitting here right now, but in here, come in and say, where did you teach your captains how to tie knots? He said, they lowered a piece of equipment for me and it was the ugliest knot I'd ever seen. Now, knot isn't a big deal. It held, it all came together, but it's a quality of skill sets that's important. And I know I've got captains here that are working with their crews and are excellent knot tires and have been for a long time.
Could you please wrap it up? The theatrics are getting old. I mean, we want to go home here.
You asked a long time ago that said, and many times it said, you don't want reasons for why I'm coming to the conclusions I'm coming to.
When you're talking about tying knots, it's ridiculous. Just, wrap
Okay,
it up.
I'll make it simple. And you've got basics, there's a basic skill sets. And basic skill sets reflect all the way down the line. And that's important. Shh. Dr. Klass's letter just blew me away in our response to him. In saying that CAL FIRE is not responsible for the circumstances surrounding these events. That would say that we've got two separate type of employees here. We've got employees who are CAL FIRE employees, and we've got employees that are not CAL FIRE employees. Unfortunately, this builds right into the concept of excuse it, don't fix it. I wish that were different. We've been heard over and over again that we're going to expand services from the state. We're going to lose services. We had wonderful new equipment that came in when the state came in. I have somebody ask, where's the new equipment that CAL FIRE brought with them? I know we have new engines here. Those were purchased with funds that this district has been saving up for over 20 years. It wasn't CAL FIRE's money that bought those. It wasn't CAL FIRE that brought them here. We had them all along. So what do I look for improving? I look for improving teamwork and building teamwork with the allied emergency service providers. I look for the name protection that doesn't come before community, that places Coastside as being community number one. By the way, for everybody, Coastside Fire is not Half Moon Bay. Coastside Fire goes from Martins Beach all the way up to Devil's Slide. It's everybody. It's all of us. The state has the job, and this is directly from their mission statement, of serving and safeguarding and protecting the property and resources of California. The mission of Coastside is to protect the lives, environment, properties of our community through fire suppression, prevention, and emergency services. Two very different focuses. One encompasses the other. I don't say that it doesn't. But one has a narrow focus, focused on us. The other has a larger focus. And you see that when it comes to the time of major fire seasons, when larger incidents take precedence. There's a lot of other things that I can see and have looked at and watched around us change. The ability to reward special skill sets, bilingual, water rescue, cliff rescue, increased community participation, increased ability of not only our junior staff, but our senior staff to be aware of the community. We have been bailed out again and again and again, and most of you have no idea how many times, by people that care. We talked about the people that are here, the people that are holding it together. They're important. We've got a lot of new people in that are good. A lot of them that are good. And they're becoming more and more, as they're here, better acclimated to this area. But we do know that we have turnover. You've seen it documented. It's not the 2 in 14 months. It's 6 or 7. Those numbers are huge in difference. It's not huge that we can't manage it. But why are one set of numbers reported and not the other? I can go on and on, because there's a lot of changes, a lot of things I've experienced, a lot of people I've talked to. Summarize it in this. Talking to chiefs, fire chiefs, and to districts directors, one common theme seems to go. And that is, if you don't have to have it, don't settle for the least. If you can get out of the CAL FIRE contract, do it. I had a chief that's been here and been through the worst of the stuff here. The very worst of it. Walk up to me about 2 months ago now, look me in the eye and say, Doug, I just have one thing to say to you. Keep walking the walk. Keep on the path you're on. Now, that's his opinion. But at some point, I am required, as part of my job, to look at the advice and look at the comments that the people that are in the business, that are working in the business on a daily basis, that have years and years of experience, and to follow that. You can judge me and do whatever you want with that. But I believe that what we're walking down, the path that I'm on, is the one that provides the best possible service level that this community can have. For some it's a joke, for me it's very real.